Have you ever wondered what really happens in old cemeteries after dark? That's what me and my friends wanted to find out. We'd heard stories about the old Blackwood Cemetery, tales of restless spirits and strange happenings. So, armed with a couple of cameras and a whole lot of skepticism, we decided to spend a night among the tombstones, hoping to catch something, anything, on film for our channel. We thought it would be a bit of a laugh, a spooky adventure to tell our friends about. We had no idea what we were walking into. The moment we stepped through those rusty iron gates, everything changed. It was a still, quiet night. But inside the cemetery walls, a cold wind began to swirl around us, whistling between the ancient gravestones. It felt unnatural. The air grew heavy, thick with a silence that felt older than the stones themselves. We joked about it at first, blaming it on our nerves. But the feeling of being watched was immediate and undeniable. We set up our gear, our nervous laughter echoing in the oppressive quiet. We started our walk, cameras rolling, ready to debunk whatever ghosts we might find. At first, the signs were small, easy to dismiss. We were filming a particularly old section of the cemetery when a bouquet of fresh flowers on a nearby grave suddenly toppled over, scattering petals across the dirt. There was no wind at that moment. We all saw it, but we tried to rationalize it. Maybe a small animal? Then came the footsteps, a clear, crunching sound on the gravel path just behind us. We'd stop, turn around, and there was nothing. Just empty, moonlit paths stretching into the darkness. We were the only living souls for miles. Or so we thought. Strange lights, like little flickers of static, danced between the distant trees. We assumed they were fireflies, but they moved too erratically, too quickly, and then vanished. We kept pushing deeper, telling ourselves it was all in our heads, our imaginations running wild in the creepy setting. But then, things escalated. My friend Mike, who was leading the way, suddenly froze. He whipped around, his eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice trembling. He said he heard a voice, a faint, raspy whisper, right behind his ear, but we were all several feet away from him. A few minutes later, Sarah let out a small gasp and grabbed her arm. She said something cold had touched her, like icy fingers brushing against her skin. We pointed the camera at her arm, and in the dim light, we could see it. A faint, red handprint, already starting to fade. That's when the real fear started to set in. This wasn't our imagination. This was real. We started reviewing the footage on our camera's small screen, and our blood ran cold. The screen was filled with orbs, dozens of them glowing white and blue, zipping through the frame. They weren't dust. They were too defined, too self-illuminated. Then we saw them. Shadowy shapes, darker than the night around them, drifting between the graves. They were tall and thin, moving with a purpose that made my stomach clench. One of the shapes moved directly in front of the camera, blocking our view for a split second before vanishing. We were capturing things that shouldn't exist, things that our eyes couldn't see, but the camera could. The fun was over. This was terrifying. Our investigation led us to the oldest part of the cemetery, dominated by a massive, crumbling mausoleum. The heavy iron door was chained and padlocked shut. It looked like it hadn't been opened in a century. As we filmed its ornate, weathered facade, a deafening bang erupted from inside. It was so loud it made us all jump back. Then the door began to shake violently, rattling in its frame as if something massive was slamming against it from the other side. The chain strained, and we could hear a low, guttural groaning sound coming from within. Panic took over. We were no longer investigators. We were prey. We had to get out. We turned and ran, but the path we had followed to get there seemed different. The familiar landmarks were gone. The trees seemed to have shifted, and the shadows on the ground stretched and twisted into unnatural, menacing shapes. It felt like the cemetery itself was alive, a labyrinth designed to keep us trapped. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sounded like someone was chasing us. We could feel the temperature dropping even further, a biting cold that seeped into our bones. The feeling of being watched was now a feeling of being hunted. We scrambled through the darkness, guided only by the dim light of our camera, desperate to find the gate. Finally, we saw at the entrance. A dark archway against the slightly less dark sky. We burst through the gates and didn't stop running until we were back in the car. Doors locked. Gasping for breath, we sat there in silence for a long time, the adrenaline slowly draining away, replaced by a deep, unsettling dread. We had survived, but we had brought something back with us. Not a spirit, but proof. Widrovelm barely speaking a word, the night's events replaying in our minds. It wasn't until the next day, in the safety of the bright sunlight, that we dared to watch all the footage. We went through it frame by frame, our hands shaking. The orbs, the shadows, the shaking Dorit was all there, clearer and more terrifying than we remembered. But it was the final clip, the last few seconds of footage from our chaotic escape, that will haunt me forever. As we were running, the camera had swung wildly, catching a glimpse of our group. And there, standing directly behind Sarah, was a figure. He was transparent, almost shimmering, a tall, gaunt shape, wearing what looked like old, tattered clothing. And just before the footage cut out, it slowly turned its head, its dark, empty eyes seeming to look directly into the camera. Directly at us. We had gone looking for ghosts, and we found one. We have the proof, and I don't think I'll ever sleep with the lights off again. Thanks for watching. If you have any similar experiences, share them in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more investigations. Stay safe out there,